If you're sitting there holding just 5Pi and honestly feeling a bit left behind, well, this explainer was built exactly for you. Welcome. Real quick, right off the bat, I'm just an unofficial creator, and this absolutely isn't financial advice. Always do your own research safely. But today we're going to uncover a totally fascinating truth. We're going to see exactly why the ultimate strength of this whole network doesn't rely on those massive whale accounts at all. No, it relies on the long-term belief of everyday people holding very, very little. It is so incredibly easy to fall into what I like to call the comparison trap, right? You log online, you're scrolling, and boom, suddenly a screenshot of someone's massive 50,000 Pi balance goes totally viral. You look down at your own phone, you see this humble single-digit balance of just 5 Pi, and honestly, it's hard not to feel a little bit of, well, whale envy. It's real. That psychological barrier instantly makes you doubt the value of your own participation. You start to think, like, is there even a point to showing up anymore? Okay, let's dive into this. Because that feeling of discouragement, it almost always leads us to one inevitable question. Are my 5Pi completely useless? Like, am I even important to this network at all? Let me tell you, it is a completely natural insecurity when you're measuring your worth strictly by the numbers. But if you're asking this, you're probably looking through the lens of traditional finance, where only the biggest, wealthiest whales matter. Let's totally flip that model right on its head. See, the foundational philosophy of this entire system is simple, but it is radical. Pi Network was never built just for the wealthy. It was built for ordinary people. Think about it. Traditional crypto mining historically required these insanely expensive hardware rigs and, oh my gosh, massive electric bills. It inherently favored the ultra-wealthy and the highly technical. But this project? It was designed specifically for the person who might not have thousands of dollars to risk on volatile markets, but they do have a mobile phone, a tiny bit of daily patience, and a genuine vision for a changing digital future. Let me give you a very real-world scenario to really bring this concept to life. Picture a student living in a small, rural village. They definitely don't have some crazy expensive computing setup or a bunch of disposable income. But what they do have is a single smartphone. And with that phone, they engage in just one tap daily. On its own, sure, that one tap might seem totally insignificant. But when you zoom out, when you realize that this exact same action is being mirrored by millions of ordinary people across the globe every single day, man, that changes everything. That collective, synchronized participation isn't just some gimmick. It is literally the mechanism that secures and legitimizes the entire network. And this collective power, it actually builds tangible value through 4 really distinct pillars. It starts with that daily participation, right? Keeping the pulse of the network alive and engaged. From there, users are organically learning about decentralized technology with every single interaction, which brings the whole space that much closer to actual mass adoption. Plus, they're helping with KYC by trusting and verifying each other to maintain a highly secure environment. And on top of all that, they're actively supporting ecosystem apps by providing invaluable data and utility. So by doing these things, you aren't just sitting there holding a coin, you are actively pouring the concrete for a massive technological movement. And this brilliantly illustrates a historical parallel that is just impossible to ignore. Think way back to the early days of Bitcoin, around 2009. The mainstream sentiment back then was overwhelmingly negative. Skeptics looked at this new digital asset, which was literally worth fractions of a penny at the time, and they confidently declared it had zero future. None. They were like, what is the point of holding a few bits of digital code? But fast forward to today, the people who held onto those small amounts through sheer belief, they were the ones who ultimately saw the vision realized. That initial skepticism was literally just noise. History consistently teaches us this. Every massive technology starts out looking incredibly small. Whether it's the early days of the internet, the very first clunky personal computers, or the dawn of cryptocurrency, true innovation never, ever looks like a finished giant on day one. It doesn't depend solely on who managed to hoard the absolute most coins the fastest. Not at all. It depends entirely on the long-term belief and resilience of the community, the people who stick around while the foundation is still being poured. And speaking of pouring that foundation, the complex building phase of any legitimate network simply cannot be rushed. It just takes time. Behind the scenes, developers are actively building out infrastructure for millions of concurrent users. They're tightening security protocols to completely protect the ecosystem, and they're developing these ecosystem apps that bring actual real-world utility. This deliberate, careful construction is exactly what separates a flash-in-the-pan trend from real, sustainable innovation. Just knowing this intense work is happening right now should give every single smallholder immense confidence in the long-term vision. Now, what's really interesting about this adoption flow is how it completely validates the smallholder. Because true mass adoption, it doesn't start with Wall Street hedge funds or giant corporate investors. It begins organically. It starts with students and freelancers, ordinary, everyday people using digital assets to exchange services peer-to-peer. That confidence then naturally spills over into local shops, who start accepting cheaper digital payments. And eventually, that scales all the way up to massive online businesses. It's the everyday transactions, driven by everyday people, that will ultimately reshape global commerce. So we come full circle right back to that humble balance, 5 pi. When you actually understand the core vision, the historical parallels we talked about, and that real-world adoption flow, that tiny number looks entirely different, doesn't it? The ultimate strength of this ecosystem does not lie in dormant wallets held by a few giant whales. No, it lies in the massive, interconnected web of millions of everyday pioneers. Your small balance is the actual bedrock of the network's future utility, and it holds significantly more weight and potential than you might have ever imagined. If you understand that this movement is truly built on patience, community, and long-term vision, drop "I believe in Pi" down in the comments below. Share this explainer with a pioneer who might be feeling just a little bit discouraged today. And hey, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into digital innovation. But right before you go, consider this. What if the most powerful financial force of the next decade isn't a single billionaire hoarding massive wealth, but a synchronized global army of ordinary people holding just 5 pi? Thanks so much for learning with me today. Keep tapping, and I will see you in the next explainer.